Exodia is one of the most legendary beings in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! And belongs to the most iconic monsters out there, and that for multiple reasons. Be it the special condition that you need all 5 parts of it together, that it wins the duel automatically as soon as you get all those parts, or just for the iconic moment in the first episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters. Everybody knows these sentences.
Draw your last pathetic card so I can end this, Yugi.
Followed by the legendary
My grandpa's deck has no pathetic cards, Kaiba.
with the follow-up of Exodia obliterating Kaiba and his Blue Eyes White Dragons. Since then, Exodia gets always connected to her infinite power. But is Exodia really the strongest being with infinite powers in Yu-Gi-Oh? I will talk about this and much more in today's episode of Gods of Yugioh. But before we start, I would appreciate you to subscribe this channel if you enjoy watching deep diving Yu-Gi-Oh content, so we can make it possible to reach the 1000 subscribers this year. But anyways, let's get started. Let us start with the origin inspiration for Exodia, which isn't that easy to get onto, since he doesn't have a name that connects to ancient Egyptian mythology, unlike the other gods we talked about until now. But we know that Exodia is based on a myth, since Kazuki Takahashi, the creator and author of Yu-Gi-Oh! Mentioned it himself whenever he talked about his favorite monster cards in the series. The only possible origin inspiration I could find for Exodia was Osiris, since Osiris got betrayed by his brother Set and got cut into several pieces that were scattered across all of Egypt. The obvious connection is about the split pieces. But what's also interesting is that Osiris is the actual name of Slifer the Sky Dragon. Yugi started off with a god inspired by Osiris, while obtaining the actual Osiris god card afterwards in Battle City, which is pretty cool in my opinion. But let's get to the strength of Exodia now. It isn't that clear how you could rank his powers, but he is definitely one of the strongest beings in Yu-Gi-Oh! Exodia was famous in ancient Egypt for being a demon god guardian who destroyed 1000 armies in a single night. Exodia is probably the car spirit of Shimon. Shimon only calls Exodia my ancient spirit when summoning him in the manga, while the anime makes it clear that Exodia is actually his car. The manga isn't that clear about that in my opinion, since it's pretty common to call godlike beings by something like my god or anything like that. But I think that it is actually his car. But the interesting thing is that Exodia had to be sealed into 5 stone slabs and also needs to be summoned with the Millennium Key. Shimon's soul in combination with the Millennium Key was probably what gave birth to such a godly car, which would be the reason why it is too powerful to be sealed into one slab and has to be summoned by the key holder. A guardian that is similar to the 3 legendary gods, since they can also only be called forth by the pharaoh with the Millennium Pendant or puzzle. But that's also a point which places Exodia below those gods, because he can be summoned by someone of a lower rank and power level. But he should stay above most other cars for being bound with a Millennium item. Exodia's main attack, Exodo Flame, which is his obliterating attack, was so powerful that he destroyed an army of zombies created by Akhenaten with Zog's power, which was so powerful that a priest would probably have lost the war to them. Exodia's strength is seemingly fueled by anger. Shimon talks multiple times about Exodia needing to consume all his anger to release the flames and to increase the flames with anger. But Exodia was no match for Zog, since his most powerful attack, Exodo Blaze, which was fueled by all the anger and soul of Shimon, didn't scratch Zog at all. We saw a little bit more in the anime version. There we saw that Exodia was immortal as long as he gets bar to nourish from. He could regrow an arm after losing it and gave Zog a couple punches, but those also weren't effective against him. Exodia got one-shotted by Zog's Dark Phenomenon afterwards in both the anime and the manga. So, to put it short, Exodia is one of the strongest beings, but doesn't play in the realm of the legendary gods. Exodia can extinct powerful enemies in an instant with his hellish flames of anger and has regenerative capabilities in the anime, which makes him immortal as long as he gets powered by souls. A interesting thing for people who didn't watch Yu-Gi-Oh! GX is that Exodia also appears there. The 3rd season of GX is about entering a dimension of duel monsters, where Exodia is also sealed behind a massive door. Amon Garam wanted to rule over that world and needed to release Exodia for that, which shows again what a godly power Exodia has. But to control and release Exodia, he needed to tribute the person he loved to him. It is like a ritual of gaining Exodia's trust. That differs a lot to the Exodia of the ancient Egypt, which could only be controlled by the Millennium Key. But those two Exodias shouldn't be the same beings, since Exodia died in the past through Zorg's attack. That Duel Monsters dimension in GX is more about the actual spirits of the Duel Monsters cards manifesting in there. So we had an ancient Egyptian Exodia who was the inspiration for the Duel Monsters version of Exodia, which then manifests into a new Exodia being in the Duel Monsters dimension. At least that's what makes the most sense to me. The power of GX's Exodia was strong enough to fight with a weakened version of Yubel, but Yubel was still overpowering Exodia's powers at the end, so even that version doesn't stay at the top. And that should be it for this video. Even though Exodia is known as a god in the card game as well as in ancient past as a spirit, he isn't playing in the same realm of strength as the legendary gods or other strong beings like Yubel, but he is nonetheless one of the strongest beings to ever wander that world. Probably born by the spirit of Shimon in combination with the Millennium Key, defeating thousands of armies, getting sealed afterwards until the fight against Zorg starts, where he dies. Pegasus then created the cards about all 5 sealed pieces of Exodia that came into the possession of Yugi's grandpa, Soguruko, who gave his tech to Yugi, where he summoned Exodia for the very first time in the history of Duel Monsters against Kaiba. Haga later on destroyed Exodia by throwing the pieces into the ocean. We never see them again besides some bootleg versions from the Rare Hunters until we get to Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, where Yubel played them and gave them afterwards to Amon, who released the real Exodia from the Duel Monsters dimension to rule the world. But that was stopped by Yubel, which ends the story of Exodia the Forbidden One. I hope I was able to explain Exodia understandable enough. Was I able to show you something new about him? Comment it down below. I'm pretty sure that most people thought that Exodia was actually a stronger being, on par or even above the legendary gods, but I hope I was explaining it well enough why it isn't the case. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to this channel for more interesting Yu-Gi-Oh content in future. Have a great day and we see us in my next video. Bye!